Hello, Manchester City fan. The news that is shaking the Etihad Stadium's backstage has arrived with full force, and you need to stay until the end to understand everything that is at stake. The truth is that the atmosphere, which is usually one of dominance and confidence, now carries a tone of uncertainty and expectation. The reason? A possible farewell that no one wanted to face. Ederson may have played his last match for City. Yes, you heard that right. The Brazilian goalkeeper, one of the key figures of the Guardiola era, might be quietly bidding farewell. It all happened following a devastating 5-2 victory over Crystal Palace, an epic performance by City, including a comeback after being down 2-0. What seemed like just another day of brilliance at the Etihad transformed into a potential final chapter for one of the most important players in the squad. Kevin De Bruyne's performance was simply breathtaking. He commanded the midfield with mastery, scored, provided an assist, and showed why he continues to be a world-class reference. Even the most demanding commentators were won over, but not even all the brilliance of that afternoon could erase the concern in the air. Ederson left the field with an injury in the second half, and, according to sources close to the matter, the situation may be more serious than initially thought. The goalkeeper had been struggling with persistent groin pain throughout the season, a discomfort that had kept him out of 6 Premier League matches and on the bench for others. Despite his efforts to continue, his body signaled that the limit was nearing. Now, with the season drawing to a close, there is uncertainty about his return. Guardiola hopes to be able to count on him for the Club World Cup, which will be held in the United States in the middle of the year, but the chances remain open, and this is precisely where the rumors gain strength. Some backstage reports suggest that Saudi Arabian clubs have once again shown interest in the goalkeeper. The possibility of a lucrative offer, both financially and in terms of stability, could be tipping the scales. If this materializes, that game against Crystal Palace could have marked Ederson's farewell to the club where he has won titles and gained international recognition. On the other hand, City is not standing still. Stefan Ortega, the immediate substitute, has proven to be reliable whenever called upon. With a contract until 2026, he is a safe option in the short term, although there are still doubts about whether he can maintain the high level required in European football as a regular starter. In times of renewal and transition, it is natural for the club to begin thinking about what comes next. Guardiola is a master at anticipating the future. When he senses that a cycle is coming to an end, he starts planning the next move. And with Ederson, this may be exactly what is happening. The history he has built is remarkable, but even the greatest cycles come to an end. It is up to the board and the coaching staff to assess the best time to turn the page, with wisdom and planning. But it's not just in goal that City is moving. The board is working hard to strengthen the squad and keep the team competitive in all scenarios. With the departure of Cheeky Begiristain, who marked an era of successful signings, Hugo Vanna takes on the responsibility of keeping the machinery running smoothly, and Vanna's first big challenge will be in the transfer market, which promises to be a true whirlwind in the upcoming European summer. One of the most talked-about targets in the Etihad corridors is Andrea Kambiaso, a versatile fullback from Juventus. The player has caught attention due to his ability to play on both flanks and even as a midfielder, with a style similar to João Cancelo. Guardiola is known to favor such players, athletes who easily adapt to different roles on the field, contributing both defensively and in building offensive play. And City is willing to go far to bring Kambiaso in. Reports indicate that the club intends to double the player's current salary, which stands at around $2.1 million per season. The Citizens' offer would be in the range of $4.2 million, a sum that clearly demonstrates how much the Spanish coach sees potential in the Italian player. Juventus, who initially asked for nearly $70 million to release Kambiaso, now seem more flexible. Sources close to the negotiation suggest that somewhere between $51 and $60 million could be enough to close the deal. For City, this amount is within the budget and the investment standard the club usually makes in strategic reinforcements. With the possible departure of Kyle Walker, who may be bidding farewell after years of service, Kambiaso emerges as a name that could take over the starting spot without losing quality. especially considering that Guardiola has the ability to enhance versatile players and adapt them to his tactical system, as he has done so many times successfully. But the most bombshell name linked to Manchester City at the moment is another. It's Florian Wirtz, the Bayer Leverkusen midfielder, considered by many to be the best in his position right now. At just 21 years old, he already boasts impressive numbers: 192 professional matches, 56 goals scored, and 63 assists. A complete player with a strong game understanding, creativity, and constant offensive presence. According to sources close to the club, Wirtz would be the main target to replace Kevin De Bruyne if the Belgian really leaves City at the end of the season, and the interest is mutual. The young German is reportedly thrilled with the possibility of working with Guardiola and joining one of the strongest squads in world football. Real Madrid is also keeping an eye on the player, especially if Xabi Alonso takes over as manager. But the structure, playing style, and ambition of Manchester City seem to weigh more at this moment. The asking price from Bayer Leverkusen is high, $129 million. But considering the age, potential, and already proven quality of the player, the investment could pay off in time. Wirtz could become a reference for years at the Etihad, and his fit into City's tactical system would be natural. And he's not the only name in the frame. James Maddison from Tottenham is also being looked at. City is considering investing around $60 million in the English midfielder, known for his sharp vision and creative abilities. This move would further complete the squad, ensuring that Guardiola has different alternatives in the offensive sector. In goal, another name being considered is Andriy Lunin from Real Madrid. If Ederson indeed leaves the club, Lunin emerges as a reliable alternative, with experience and the ideal age to take on the starring role in the City goal. And there's more. Daniel Munoz, a fullback from Crystal Palace, is also on the radar. Initially, it was speculated that the player could be released for around $25 million, but a new contract signed recently might complicate this operation. Nevertheless, the name is still being monitored, especially if other options don't materialize. The truth is that Manchester City is preparing for a busy summer. The transition in the boardroom, the potential departures of key figures like Ederson and De Bruyne, and the need to refresh key areas of the squad put the club at a decisive moment. But if there's one thing the fans have already learned, it's that City, even in the face of the biggest challenges, tends to act with intelligence, planning, and ambition. With so many names being discussed, it is inevitable that expectations arise among the fans. Who will actually arrive? Who will leave? And what will the new structure of this team, which has already enchanted the world, look like, and which, inevitably, will need to reinvent itself to remain at the top? The victorious cycle that Manchester City has built under Pep Guardiola's leadership has not been sustained solely by great stars, but also by a strategic, intelligent squad management that is always attentive to the future. And it is precisely at this point that Hugo Vanna's work stands out. Replacing Cheeky Begiristain, who became synonymous with successful signings, is a highly risky task. But Vanna arrives with internal backing and apparently already with a clear plan in mind. The immediate goal is to prepare the club for the possible departure of two of its most recognized pillars, Ederson in goal and De Bruyne in midfield. These are names that helped write glorious chapters in City's recent history, but are now increasingly close to the end of their respective cycles. Ederson's injury not only emotionally shook the fans, but also accelerated internal discussions about the transition in goal. The security he has always provided, not only with his saves, but also with his ball distribution and accurate long passes, will be difficult to replace. His assist for James McAtee's goal against Crystal Palace, for example, was a true masterclass in reading the game and execution, a play that very few goalkeepers in the world would be capable of pulling off. However, at the same time, squad management must be pragmatic. One cannot cling to the past if it compromises performance in the present and future. Ederson has market value, particularly in the Middle East, where his experience, CV, and profile are still highly valued. And if the right offer comes along, both for the player and the club, it might indeed be the perfect moment to close this chapter. with gratitude, respect, and eyes focused on what lies ahead. In this scenario, the possible arrival of Andriy Lunin is being viewed favorably by sections of the board. The Ukrainian goalkeeper, currently at Real Madrid, has the age, technical profile, and experience to take the position with quality. While Ortega has proven to be reliable, having high-level competition in the department is always necessary at a club aiming for every title in the season. While the situation in goal is delicate, the movement in midfield is even more intense. Kevin De Bruyne, despite shining as always, knows that he is closer to the end of his journey at the club than to the beginning. The frequent injuries and the physical demands of English football naturally weigh into this equation. Therefore, finding someone who can assume this role of creativity and leadership on the field is a top priority. And this is where the name of Florian Wirtz fits perfectly. The Bayer Leverkusen midfielder not only has the technical attributes to replace De Bruyne, but he also brings with him promising youth and numbers that impress any analyst. His versatility, ability to play centrally or more wide, and his composure in deciding games make him one of the most sought-after names in European football at the moment. Despite the high value, $129 million, City is willing to make a strong move in the negotiation. The internal evaluation is that Wirtz may not only fill the gap left by De Bruyne but also further develop under Guardiola's guidance. And we know that when the Spanish coach puts his trust in a player, he usually manages to extract the best from them. Just look at what he did with Bernardo Silva, Phil Foden, Rodri, and so many others. But Wirtz's name is not the only one on the radar. The club is also closely following the performance of James Maddison, currently at Tottenham. With a more direct style, capable of scoring from medium range and having sharp game vision, Maddison appears as an option for an immediate impact. The difference in profile between him and Wirtz shows that City is considering all possibilities, both to maintain the possession and control style and to add an extra dose of aggression and directness to the midfield. And while the midfield and goal are being restructured, the fullback position is also experiencing moments of expectation. The possible departure of Kyle Walker opens space for a new approach in the sector, and Andrea Kambiaso emerges as a modern and multifunctional alternative. Playing freely on both sides of the field and comfortable in offensive build-ups, he could become yet another tactical weapon for Guardiola. It is not an exaggeration to say that Kambiaso could replicate what João Cancelo did in his best phase, coming inside, offering numerical superiority in the midfield, initiating attacking moves, and still recovering defensively. He is the type of player that fits perfectly with the Catalan coach's philosophy, who values intelligent movements, versatility, and game reading. Additionally, Kambiaso also represents a long-term solution. At just 24 years old, he still has room to evolve and could spend many years at the club, establishing himself as a key player in the new era that is beginning to take shape. Guardiola, apparently, has already given the green light, and the salary proposal under consideration reinforces just how determined City is to make this signing happen. But not everything is rosy in the market. A name that had gained momentum recently, Daniel Munoz from Crystal Palace, has become more distant. The Colombian renewed his contract with the London club, which automatically raised the cost of any future negotiations. Initially, it was speculated that he could be released for around $25 million, a price that seemed accessible by City's standards. Now, with the new contract signed, the mission has become more complex, although the interest has not been entirely ruled out. This renewal shifts the board's focus, which now turns its attention to options such as Jeremy Frimpong from Bayer Leverkusen, and even young prospects like Milos Kerkez from Bournemouth, who have been closely monitored. The goal is clear: to maintain a young, versatile squad ready to sustain the very high level of competitiveness that City demands in all competitions. Meanwhile, the fans watch attentively. Every name that appears, every rumor, every movement behind the scenes becomes a topic of conversation in groups, forums, and social media. And it's no wonder. After all, we are talking about a club that has gone from being just an English powerhouse to becoming a global reference. Everything that happens at the Etihad today has global repercussions. This transition that is beginning to happen at Manchester City is not just a change of names. It actually represents a strategic overhaul, a new cycle that goes far beyond the replacement of key players. The club is preparing for a future where it will continue to fight for the biggest titles in world football, but with a new structure and, possibly, a new soul on the pitch. And when we talk about restructuring, we're not talking about desperation or forced reconstruction. This is something planned, meticulous, as has become characteristic of the City board. The squad has been built over years with a very clear logic, blending established stars with young talents who can grow under the guidance of Guardiola and his coaching staff. The imminent departure of Kevin De Bruyne, for example, is a huge loss both technically and symbolically. He is not only the creative brain of the team, but also a reference of leadership, commitment, and consistency. His absence will be felt in all aspects, both on and off the pitch. But precisely because the club understands this importance, they have prepared in advance. Florian Wirtz has already been identified as a potential successor, and the fact that the player is open to joining City's project shows that the club remains an elite destination for the best players in the world. And it doesn't stop there. Manchester City is also closely monitoring other players who could add value to the midfield. While Wirtz is the most talked-about name, the board understands that the sector needs more than one new piece, especially considering the high number of games per season and the natural wear and tear on players. This is where James Maddison comes in as a complementary alternative, someone who can share the burden of creation, offering more width to the attacking sector and relieving the pressure on the central players. This broader approach also applies to the defensive sector. With Kyle Walker's possible departure, it's not enough to simply bring in a direct replacement. The coaching staff's idea is to have fullbacks who can perform multiple roles, attacking centrally, quickly recovering, switching the play, and supporting the midfield. Kambiaso fits this mold, but the search continues for names that offer this same profile, or even young players who can be shaped for this role over time. What many fans may not immediately realize is that these moves are part of a strategy of constant adaptation. Guardiola has already hinted that, even if he stays for a few more seasons, he is increasingly focused on leaving a legacy. This means building a foundation that will survive his departure, one that maintains the principles of possession, pressing, attacking fluidity, and game control. That's why the club doesn't act impulsively. Just because a player stands out in one season doesn't automatically make them a target. Every name that enters the radar goes through an extensive analysis process: technical, physical, tactical, and most importantly, behavioral. Manchester City values players with a winning mentality, who know how to handle pressure and are willing to adapt to the system rather than the other way around. In this context, the work of the new director Hugo Vanna will be constantly tested. It is his responsibility to maintain the very high standards set by Begiristain. The difference now is that world football is changing, and clubs that want to stay at the top need to reinvent themselves even more quickly. Competition is getting fiercer, with clubs like Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, and PSG also renewing their squads with young prospects and established talents. Therefore, every move must be precise. Every signing needs to make sense not just on the pitch, but also within the dressing room. The team chemistry is one of the greatest assets that City has cultivated over recent seasons, and this cannot be lost. Success on the pitch starts off it, in the work environment, the synergy between players, and the mutual trust between the players and coaching staff. It is at this point that Pep Guardiola remains an absolutely central figure. Even though he doesn't directly participate in every negotiation, his vision and requirements shape the profile of the players being sought. He knows exactly what he wants from each position, and his demand for excellence forces the club to be selective and strategic. Guardiola doesn't just want good players, he wants pieces that fit into the system like perfect cogs, functioning with precision in a tactical clock that demands absolute synchronicity. The scenario also becomes more challenging with the pressure for immediate results. After winning everything in recent seasons, including the long-awaited Champions League, City is now seen as the team to beat on all fronts. This means that any stumble, no matter how small, becomes headline news, and any signing that doesn't meet expectations is seen as a grave mistake. That's why the selection of names like Florian Wirtz, Kambiaso, and Madison is not just based on talent, but on profile, maturity, and potential for adaptation. They are not coming to make up the numbers, but to assume a leading role. And this requires more than just skill. It demands character, intelligence, and a willingness to learn and evolve constantly. Meanwhile, Ederson's situation continues to be closely monitored. The Brazilian goalkeeper, despite his injury, still has market value and prestige. Clubs in Saudi Arabia remain interested, and an official proposal could arrive at any time. If City feels it is the right moment to release the player, the transition needs to be smooth. Ortega, who has already shown competence, could even hold the position in the short term, but the ideal would be to have a new reference for the position. Someone who can carry the weight of the number 1 shirt with security and reliability for many years. This is where names like Lunin are gaining strength again. The Real Madrid goalkeeper shares similar characteristics with Ederson: good play with the feet, quick reflexes, game reading, and courage to leave the area. Still young, he could grow even more under the guidance of City's technical staff, who have already shown they know how to mold raw talents and turn them into protagonists. And as the squad continues to be adjusted, the pre-season planning is also beginning to take shape behind the scenes. With the Club World Cup in the United States approaching, the idea is to start the next season with the team already settled and the new pieces well integrated into the system. Guardiola wants to avoid improvisations and start the year with his foot on the gas. And for that, the squad needs to be ready from the first training sessions. And with that, citizen fan, we come to the end of this analysis of Manchester City's next steps. The club's future is shaping up to be exciting, with new signings, possible departures, and a series of challenges that will shape the next season. But before we wrap up, if you enjoyed the content and want to stay up to date with all the news about City and the football world, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss any updates and can help us continue bringing the best news about our beloved Manchester City. See you next time, and as always, sowing the future is the key to success. We'll see you soon.